I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live number 85. Our guest today is Paul Flannery. All goes according to plans. We've got both co-hosts in attendance today, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss and Zach Harper. Today's show is brought to you by Dwayne Wade's new bar called Remember 2006? It's got the cheapest shots in town. You're welcome. Today's show could also be brought to you by Darren Williams' hair, now seen on Ethan. How are you doing, man?
I think it needs to be more like that.
Go.
I think that's the.
Got a Matt Barnes.
There we go. More Matt Barnes-ish, somewhere in between. Either way, not a compliment. Either way, not a compliment.
All right, well, let's get right to the big news, which is that Avery Johnson was fired after 28 games, 27 games, something like that. They started 14-4. They are now 14 and 14. Is that correct? And
That is correct.
This team is, are they good? What do you guys make of this firing? Are they just a 14-14 team that randomly decided to fire their coach?
I think that they have a good roster if Darren Williams is good. If that makes any sense, I think they're built around Darren Williams being a very good player, like being an elite force, and then it's a trickle down effect to everybody else. But if he's not playing at the level that we've all expected him to return to, then that's not a very good roster for figuring out problems and really working through issues. Like it's just a conglomeration of names.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this because I thought there was way too much hype attached to the Brooklyn Nets in the preseason, considering their lack of defensive pieces. At the same time, Avery Johnson is not my favorite coach. Speaking of Remember 2006, I can't forget in 2006 when he kept double-teaming Shaquille O'Neal, fat Shaquille O'Neal, as Dwayne Wade killed his team. It made no sense. You can rarely isolate one decision and say that's why they lost to finals, but that would seem to be the one if I had to choose one in that finals. So as far as the roster goes, I think that, I basically said it was a very trenchant, incisive, important point that the Nets were beer goggles good because the Eastern Conference is like beer goggles, and that means that they should be able to win over half their games, but not by much, which for the East, hey, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's like if you win 48 games in the East this year, you're probably a 4-3 seed even. So the defense was the big problem, it turns out, as everyone sort of expected. After being mediocre on that end in the first month when they came out hot, they were pretty bad on in December and gave up the 28th worst defensive rating. So they were really terrible. And what's funny is that was when Brook Lopez was out, and Brook Lopez was the person that everyone thought was going to be the big problem defensively. And it turned out that the only time they were any good on that end was when he was healthy.
Yeah, it was that was pretty funny with Brook, who was impressive at least offensively for a lot of this season. Here's what I think is funny, or maybe a little bit sad. Is Darren Williams a tradable contract right now? Has he gone from coveted free agent to untradeable contract in a matter of less than 2 months?
I think he is definitely tradable. If you can trade Joe Johnson's contract, you can trade Darren Williams' contract.
Yeah,
but it's an interesting question. Like maybe they can move him for someone good, like OJ Mayo.
What about a Pau Gasol for Darren Williams trade straight up, and you get to a three-headed hydra of Kobe, Nash, and Darren Williams in LA. Let's just really get crazy.
I like that. I really like that. I don't know who LA is going to play in the front court for the most part, but Jordan Hill, the Jordan Hill bandwagon. I do like that trade. I guess nobody is untradeable, to use a double negative. Nobody is not untradeable. But my God, Darren Williams' reputation, and maybe it just speaks to how we're prisoners of the moment, but it's taken quite a nosedive. And beyond whatever numbers he's producing as a shooter, that game on Christmas, it just looked like, it was bad. It was bad when he passed up a wide open 3-pointer. He was obviously scared to take it. And then Rajon Rondo zoomed down the court and took a pull-up 3-pointer, swished it in transition. And it was just such a funny, when Rajon Rondo looks like that and Darren Williams looks like that, there's been a definite switching in reputations.
Yeah, and the Nets are a team that even when their offense was going well, one of the big reasons was that they were just outworking opponents on the glass. When they beat Boston earlier in the year in Brooklyn, I was at that game, and they didn't. It's not like they were running great stuff, but they scored well because they just worked so hard to go get the ball. And Brook Lopez was a big problem for KG inside on rebounds. That's a team that needs to work really hard to score, and because they don't have 3-point shooters and they don't run. And so when you have a team who, when their best player is not engaged, then all of a sudden that team is probably not going to play as hard as they need to, besides Gerald Wallace, who does a lot of that like crazy hustling when the game is already out of hand and you're like, all right, we get it.
For a replacement coach, do you think that they can roll with PJ Carlesimo as the interim, or do they need like an actual coach? Like, not that he's not an actual coach, but like an actual plan for long term, like Stan Van Gundy or Jeff Van Gundy or any Van Gundy that's available.
I don't understand.
I just hope he's not going to strangle out those their chances to make the playoffs. We have a list of people who we're thinking about here. Obviously, PJ, Stan Van Gundy, Mike Brown, Larry Brown, D Brown, Chucky Brown, James Brown, Oprah, the halal food cart guy outside the stadium, Brooklyn Knight, Ettore Messina, David Blatt, and Quinn Snyder, who's at CSK Moscow. If they think the Russians are really going to take over the basketball ops part of this.
Yeah, Messina can't be hired. Yeah, Messina can't be hired because we just can't let these dirty foreigners come in and muck up our basketball with their new ideas, with their newfangled approaches and strategies that we haven't explored yet. It just seems very problematic. It seems to be the NBA rule to not hire foreign, except for Messina on the Lakers' end of the bench. I'm going to plead ignorance. I can only judge coaches based on whatever's on the floor, and there's so much that I don't know about the dynamics. And it's funny, so much of the conversation about coaches and fans getting riled up is just projecting whatever we assume onto what they're doing. I don't like what Avery Johnson did in 2006. That's what I would cite. But beyond that, I don't know his interpersonal dynamics with the players, and I don't know how PJ Carlesimo has changed since Sprewell strangled him. I don't know what's happened since then either. So I'm just going to plead ignorance. Obviously, Van Gundy, that sounds great, but I doubt that Van Gundy would take this job. Either Van Gundy.
They have enough money. I bet Stan would do it for enough money.
Stan has scruples, man. Maybe I'm just brainwashed from listening to his appearances on the Dan Le Batard show, but Stan Van Gundy seems to be a very well-grounded man who's just entrenched in the Florida community and the various school board battles that are going on there. I just can't see him doing it. I can't see him selling out.
Before we move on, I think it needs to be recognized how hard Ethan is working on Twitter to be entrenched with the Dan Le Batard show. I mean, I haven't seen effort like this in a long time.
Entrenched? I criticized them. I felt ashamed by the way I'd I had really done, can we say douchey? A douchey criticism of something Dan Le Batard does, and it was driving me crazy, and I don't think that's the way to ingratiate yourself in any sense, what I did. Okay, well, this is a quick aside, but there are a series of words that people use that sound like other words, but aren't the meaning of that word. For one of them is huck and chuck. I often give Beckley a lot of crap because he uses huck when the word is chuck. And for Dan Le Batard, he says, I'm going to make a delineation between this and that. He means a division, he means a differentiation, but he says delineation, that means to convey, which just scrambles my mind because you're saying, I would like to depict the depiction between two things. It's really hard to take, and since he says it all the time, I tweeted at him that maybe he should stop doing it.
I feel like you're trying to be the Wilbon to his Kornheiser, the Skip Bayless to his Stephen A. Smith. You're trying to get in there as the antithesis.
Well, if I'm doing that, I think Tom Haberstroh is just miles and miles ahead of me because he's actually on the show from time to time and does a great job.
He's the stat boy.
Mm-hmm. He is the stat boy.
Took over around the horn. Well, one player who I do know, speaking of interpersonal dynamics, one person who's been cool to follow on Twitter today was Andre Blatch because, basically Avery, to whatever extent he believed in him and gave him minutes, gave him the chance and opportunities to really turn his career around. And I'm sure after this year is up, he's going to get paid, something like the mid-level. And he's probably worth it when he plays like this. And he was really bummed out that Johnson was let go. And I'm wondering whether and King, not King James, LeBron James, his Twitter is King James, was also tweeting that it was like crazy that he got that Avery got fired. Jalen Rose was tweeting about how crazy it was. I'm wondering how this might impact Darren's relationship or standing around the league with players, even though, Chris Mannix and others have tweeted that apparently the Nets say no players were consulted in this decision.
I don't know. It really seems to have come from the top that, Prokhorov hadn't been paying attention to his team. He'd forgotten they existed, and then he remembered, and I know he doesn't use email and use many aspects of the internet, so he came across a newspaper and looked at the standings and was wildly disappointed, and that's how this happened. So I don't think that this is necessarily a Darren Williams' fault in the case of conniving or politicking. He just stopped shooting, and that's the big mystery. And I've looked at the shot charts, and he shoots a lot less at the rim, so you have to wonder if maybe his athleticism has declined a little bit or whether or not it's the system that they've been implementing.
Well, when I've been watching him, it's weird. He has like this disease where he feels like the need to cross people over after he's already gotten free. Mm-hmm. And it's really like a weird thing. I don't remember this being an issue earlier in his career, but he'll come down and put like a really hard crossover on. He'll have the step, and then he'll cross right back over and shoot a contested jump shot. Like you're past him, just go. It's a really weird thing. Okay, so we are going to transition really quickly to our guest, Paul Flannery, who works for SB Nation now. He's in Boston. He came down to New York a few times. Very knowledgeable about the Northeastern basketball teams. Let's bring him on. From SB Nation, you can follow him on Twitter at pflans with 2 N's, Paul Flannery. There he is with Fab Mello.
Yeah, I got a lot in common with Fab Mello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Great.
Good.
Well,
good.
You're a Boston guy, so let's start with the most interesting man in the world, Rajon Rondo, playing very well this year, shooting really well, but the team's offense is kind of right where it was last year. The defense is, still rounding into shape. Are you surprised that with the improvements Rondo's made, it hasn't had such an impact on the team's overall success?
Yeah, they're a strange team. They're really, even for them, they're weird this year. The pieces aren't fitting. And I don't really know. It's not the three guys. It's not Rondo. It's not KG, obviously. And, Pierce, I don't think has had the best start to the season, but I don't really think he's been fine. It's the other guys they brought in to sort of be the glue here. The Courtney Lees and Brandon Basses and even, Jeff Green, who's been talked about way too much for a player of his caliber. But those guys haven't really produced the way they want them to produce. And so it's weird. It all revolves around Rondo, but I don't think it's really Rondo's fault.
Well, this is like the worst offensive rebounding team in history. I mean, they have the lowest offensive rebounding percentage. And according to Synergy Sports, they're also last in transition defense. That seems like a problem to me.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not, Zach, you really hit the nail on the head with that one. Yeah, that's not good. Now, their offensive rebounding thing, that's been a thing for years. They don't believe in it. They don't do it. The one guy who can is Sullinger, and you saw in that Brooklyn game, he went after it a little bit, and it really helped them out. So on some level, I think Doc kind of needs to let them go a little bit on the glass, because guys like Sullinger and Wilcox, they can do it. Bass even. The transition defense, that's effort. And I think that's this is always the thing with a team like the Celtics. You wonder if it's effort because it's December and they realize these games, not that they're meaningless, but they don't really mean that much, or if it's because they're getting old fast. And that's always the concern you have with this team, which makes this interesting because, again, I don't think it's the old guys' problem. I think it's the new guys they have. I don't think the mix is right. And I will be very curious to see if Danny is able to pull off a move here before the trade deadline, because I think they desperately need another big man to go with Garnett. That's pretty obvious. So if he can pull off a move for one of these guys, I think they can be right back in the mix. But right now, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I thought they turned the corner. They won 5 out of 7 or something. They beat Philly. They had a good win against Philly. And then they went to Houston and San Antonio and got whacked. And it's like, all right, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And that's sort of been the way they've been all year.
Well, let's put you in the GM position. You're GM Flannery. And it would seem to me that Avery Bradley is their only really good trade chip, at least among pieces that they would seem willing to part with, apart from the core. Would you really heavily explore a Bradley trade, or would you go with a more patient approach of when he comes back, the defense will be reinvigorated?
In a word, hell yes, I would pursue an Avery Bradley trade if it could get you a legitimate big time, big man. And I don't know if it could, but you're right. He is their best trade chip. I think Sullinger is a trade chip in that he's young and is at least in a rotation at this point. Hey, Fab Melo, king of the D League, is all of a sudden you laugh, but he's on a rookie contract and he's 7 feet tall. I mean, there are worse trade chips to be had. But no, I think Avery is the big one. And if they wanted to go out and get one of these guys that, again, I don't think they can get a Varejao or someone like that, but if they wanted to get one of these big guys, I think that Avery Bradley would be the very first talking point. And here's the thing. I love Avery Bradley. I think he's awesome. I think that he completely turned the whole thing around last year when they put him in the starting lineup. I was on board with that. He's in his 3rd year, and he has been chronically injured a lot. And there's a question of he's young, and a lot of guys grow out of that, but there's a question of whether that's going to be a problem. He's got 2 bad shoulders now. He's 22 years old. Sell high. I do think he will make a big impact on their defense. I don't know if he'll be the savior that Celtics fans would want to think that he is.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they brought in. Sorry, go ahead, Ethan.
No, I was interrupting. I was just going to second that. I think that's the mentality I have on Bradley as well, as sell high. I mean, he's point guard sized, and I guess I just wanted to follow up. Do you think that his way of playing defense is sustainable? That ball pressure defense, it's really cool and it makes an impact, but is it something that you can see him doing in his late 20s?
Probably not. I mean, it's really hard. It's really difficult to do.
7 years from now. So young.
Sure, but I know, right? So yeah, I'm pushing 40. He's got 20 years there. But the thing about Avery Bradley that's so intriguing is not the defense totally changed things, but all of a sudden he picked up a corner 3 that, I mean, the kid couldn't even make a layup when he first got on the court, and now he's knocking down corner 3s. The growth was staggering. And so you wonder if that's going to continue and how high that's going to continue, whether or not he can become a legitimate 30-minute-a-night NBA player who can be out there for more than just his defense. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, he's got a ton of talent. So there is a question of, do you give up too soon on a guy like that? My feeling is that you got Garnett, who's still playing at a high level. You got Pierce, who's still playing at a reasonably good level. You're all in right now. And if that's what it takes to get that last piece, then you go for it. But it's got to be somebody really, really good. It can't just be a stopgap.
Well, they thought that Courtney Lee would be someone who could, at least until Bradley came back, do that D&3 role at the 2. Why hasn't that been working? Is he getting on the court a little more? Why isn't Courtney Lee making the defensive impact that a lot of people thought he would?
Biggest mystery of the season. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, and I've talked to him about this, and he's a professional. He takes his job seriously. It's not like he got a contract and came in that shape or anything like that. And it's not like they're asking him to do anything he hasn't done throughout his career. He's doing exactly what other teams have asked him to do. It just hasn't happened. You can see him fighting it a little bit. I think if he knocked down a couple of shots in the game, he'd get rolling and he'd be fine. But that's a really good question. I mean, they can't afford to have him on the court because his offense has been so bad. And so they need, but they do need that defense. So there's the eternal question right there. I mean, you can go a lot of different ways with this, but it has been a big, serious problem. And if you're talking about a trade, that's another guy you can trade because a lot of teams had interest in him in the offseason. He's got a reasonable contract. The way I look at it is, you got these young guys we talked about. You got a Brandon Bass. You got a Courtney Lee. They're serviceable NBA players on reasonable contracts. You can start packaging a little from column A, a little from column B, and you can come up with a pretty decent trade proposal. They don't have any picks, which is they got their own picks, but they don't have any good picks. So I think they are positioned to make a trade. I really do. And I think they need one.
Paul, let's I'm just going to name a random player from the Celtics who somebody on the show might have interest in. Let's say Kevin Garnett. Is Kevin Garnett taking this worse defense, this kind of pieces not fitting together well, or is he just believing in the process and the system and the season and that they'll eventually get it?
I thought you were going to talk about Jason Collins there. I was already. No, he is not. I mean, he's not taking it well. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like going out on the court and losing. He doesn't like going out on the court and not having. In Kevin's mind, everything has to be connected, and when it's not, that's when he gets frustrated. And he's a creature of habit. That guy, and he likes everything to be just so. He likes everything to be just right, and it hasn't been. It's been frustrating for him when one thing breaks down in their system and the whole thing falls apart, and he's covering a lot of ground and covering up a lot of mistakes. So he's not the kind to say go get a coach fired or anything like that, Darren Williams. But it bothers him certainly. He's not taking it well, and he's the kind of guy who he puts it on himself. It's like. Other people's failures are his failures. So it bothers him tremendously.
Well, you've been writing more kind of national stories this year with SB Nation, which has got to be fun. You get to kind of be outside of the Boston squawk box. What have been the stories that you've enjoyed covering the most, and what are you just kind of into right now at this quarter of the way into the year?
It has been fun, actually. And, a lot of people are going, are you covering the Celtics or are you covering, what are you doing again? I'm like, I'm just writing about basketball. I just happen to live in Boston, and the Celtics are an interesting story. But I can't get enough of the Knicks. I love them. They're just hilarious and weird and fascinating. They're filled with personalities, and I love the way they play for the most part. I love the way Melo's playing right now. And Ethan, I'm with you on Melo over the years. Yeah, I know, shocking. I'm with you on something.
I think we agree.
I thought, yeah, on occasion. That he's, I long thought Melo was probably the most overrated player in the league, but the way he's playing now is great, and he hasn't really even changed up his style all that much. But the way the Knicks play around him makes him that much better because they do stuff that doesn't rely on him at all, like those pick and rolls with Felton and Chandler. That Melo might as well not even be on the court, and they're still able to do those. I love the way they play. I love the way Jason Kidd's playing. So I really love the way the Knicks are playing. I don't get to see the West teams as much as I'd like, and the Western Conference is so much better than the Eastern Conference. It's not even close. I did enjoy.
Northwest has every team in the Northwest Division is 500 or better, and
It's great.
Like the worst team is the Rockets or something. It's nasty.
Right. I love it. Utah would be like a 6th seed in the East, and they can barely get out of their own way in the West. I did enjoy, not that I enjoyed, but I did think the Nets implosion was pretty interesting when I was out there. You could see that coming. I thought Avery would get a little more time, but you could tell he was a goner when I was out. That was obvious.
Wait, like, what are the signs to you that, like, what do you mean you could tell? Like, what were you seeing?
Well, I mean, I was there the day after Darren Williams had his little, I'm a system player and that kind of thing, which that's really, like, I mean, we're not children here. That's not a good sign. When your star player is questioning the lack of a system of your lame duck coach, that doesn't usually end well. But what I thought was interesting was the next day I was out there and Avery was, everyone's trying to downplay it, and Avery was talking about how, earlier in the year Joe Johnson had a problem. He took me aside and said, hey, we used to do this in Atlanta. Can we do this here? And yeah, we did that. No problem. And everybody's different. And I'm sitting there going, okay. So your other star guard is operating, behind the scenes, or the way you should professionally, and your other star guard is popping off in the press. I don't know. There may be an issue here. So, yeah, I mean, you could see that because, look, guys, Brooklyn, it was a cute story for a month, but this is not a team that's built to win a championship, but they're structured like a team that's built to win a championship. So this is not going to go well. So you got to figure out what Darren Williams is right now. And it wasn't happening with Avery Johnson. So, short of changing the player, you got to change the coach.
Paul, I've got a merry sleep with kill for you that I think you'll enjoy.
Oh, fun.
So merry sleep with kill. Varnado, Fab Melo, or Greg Steensma?
Oh, God. All right. I don't know Jarvis Varnado, so all right. Let me think about this for 5 seconds. All right, I will marry Greg Steensma because I love that dude and I love his story and everything he's gone through. And I'm a sucker for guys who make themselves into players. I'll sleep with Jarvis Varnado because I don't know him, and it's a good one-night stand. And I'll kill Fab Melo because I've watched him play, and I'm not buying it. I don't know how he ever got 32 points in a game. I mean, the D-League isn't that bad. I don't know how he got 32 points in any game. That's, people are like, oh, Fab Melo is coming. He's going to be the next Hakeem Olajuwon. I love Celtics fans. They jump on this stuff like crazy. They go crazy for this.
Jeff Green.
Don't even start with that, please. Yeah, no, I mean, Fab Melo. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
Zach, did you have one more question?
Oh, I can't. Yeah, I have a theory for you real quick. There's a ball boy at Timberwolves games who is new over the last couple of weeks. And when he is wearing a hat, he looks exactly like you. So I have a theory.
Yeah.
Either you have this extremely younger brother who's like 15 or 16 who moved to Minneapolis for some reason, or there is a version of you that has come back from the future and is implementing himself with the Timberwolves to get scoops on Ricky Rubio and Nikola Pekovic and all these guys, that is slowly getting himself ingrained in into the franchise. So which is it?
It's so Wolves-centric.
Odd. That is really odd. It's weird thing is I've got doppelgangers all over the country. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of people on Twitter say I look like Pau Gasol, which I guess my photo does. I don't. The dude, who's the dude? He played Roseanne's boyfriend, and he was in another show. You know what I'm talking about?
DJ.
Come on.
Or DJ's the girlfriend.
That guy.
I can't remember.
That guy. I actually look a lot like him when I don't have the beard. So I have doppelgangers all over the country, Zach, and so who knows? Maybe I have a slew of younger brothers all over. I don't know, but it's probably me from the future. That's probably what it is.
That's what I figured.
It just confirms that if anyone is going to invent time travel, it is Paul Flannery, because the diaspora of doppelgangers proves that theory.
Ooh, alliteration.
Right. Johnny Galecki, that's his name. Johnny Galecki. Thank you, Kevin Draper. Johnny Galecki.
All right, man. Well, thanks for dropping by. We've been really enjoying your stuff on SB Nation.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, that was the great Paul Flannery. And we're about out of time, so let's run to Dagger Smash Noted. Someone have a dagger, or should I lead off?
I'll have a dagger. I won. My dagger is going right into my stomach. This is a seppuku dagger, a Harry Carey dagger, whatever term you might want. I think that it's sometimes good to acknowledge when you've been incredibly wrong. And Paul Flannery brought up Melo, and I think I often make mistakes when I pigeonhole scores and don't allow them to perhaps flourish in another system or grow their games. And I think that's a mistake that I made with Carmelo Anthony and to a lesser extent Kevin Durant. And with Durant was different because I thought Durant was really good. I just sort of put a ceiling on him that he exceeded. And in terms of Melo, I think I conflated talent with production. I didn't like Melo's production, and I didn't push that dagger deeper into your stomach. I thought he was a rather inefficient player and a really bad defensive player, and I did not allow for perhaps in a spread pick and roll system with more space him being able to leverage that talent and the far greater production than somebody like Andre Iguodala could. So, sometimes you're wrong, and it's important to know it so you don't make the same mistakes in the future.
Also, with Melo, what's crazy is he's just shooting the crap out of the ball. Like,
yeah,
everything else aside, like attitude, whatever else, he's just shooting the ball at an incredibly. I mean, he shoots like 5.5 threes, almost 6 threes, and he's making like 44%, which is ridiculous. And he's making like 50% from the long two. So he's shooting less pull-ups, but still, the percentages are off the charts. Like if he had ever shown this kind of shooting, it's not just like growth and being a playmaker. It's like the thing he does better, he got better at, deep into his career, which is really interesting.
I think the Olympics changed him. He's a changed man because of
narrative.
Okay.
I'll go
just being closer to the Spaniards. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to go with a smash. I went as a civilian, as a customer to the Timberwolves game last night against the Rockets, and I was sandwiched between a group of guys behind me who were saying pretty much the most idiotic analysis of basketball you could imagine throughout the entire game.
We're complaining about this.
Yeah, I got online just for a brief minute to complain to Ethan about this. And I'm going to go in full basketball snob mode because the guy in front of me was cheering for Alexei Shved, not because he liked him or the Timberwolves, but because he was on his fantasy team. And when Shved grabbed a rebound or threw an assist or made a shot, he would go, fantasy! And it was all night. And it has gotten to the point where I don't think I can ever go back to the paying customers. I have to be a media member, otherwise I can't go to a basketball game. I am too big of a basketball snob at this point.
I don't want to hold up our exit that much, but don't you think that maybe Wolves fans might not be the sharpest tools? I'm just throwing it out there because I got yelled at by your Wolf fan brethren for making a joke about how white they were, and apparently that was racist, and I was very surprised. It just seemed like look, man, I don't know what's going on in Minnesota. I don't know. They're just new to the exciting basketball team, but I question a lot of things there. Yes,
I mean, they did go to the Western Conference Finals in 2004. They've watched good basketball before. It has happened. The new generation, though, cannot be saved.
No, I know what you mean. I went to a UW basketball game when I was home. I'm home here in Seattle, and there was a guy sitting behind me who would offer his little basketball analysis all the time. Like someone hedged well on a pick and roll. He's like, "Oh, great hedge! Like I don't want to see the dunk, man. I just want to see that good hedge." It's like, God, of course you want to see the dunk. I love that kind of stupid hedge crap, but I want to see dunks. Like that's the fun part. Oh my God, he was so trying to show off how smart he was, and then
Beckley's turning to the guy after a dunk, dunk,
dunk. That was more fun. All right. My noted is for Jazz coach Ty Corbin, whose 5 most played lineups all have a negative plus minus, even though the team is 500. Like, I don't even know how this is possible. Actually, I know some of it. We're going to have it on HoopSpeak in a little bit. Basically, Randy Foye is the worst. But it is like amazing to me that team 500 with so many minutes going to awful lineups. Weird thing. And a team that continues to be fascinating to me because they could be, like a 4 seed if they seems like they got it together, but they're just tripping over themselves and weird lineups and such. Okay, I think that about does it for a holiday-ish HoopSpeak Live. Roger Bain, take us out. Thanks to Paul and James for making it happen.
Donk.
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 I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis of mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.